The scripture today is from 1 Samuel 20, 1 through 42, and I only have to read the first verse. You're welcome. Yep. David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came before Jonathan and said, "What have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin against your father, that he is trying to take my life?"
Good job. Thank you, Ron. So, 1 Samuel chapter 19 ends with Saul coming to where Samuel, if you remember that, Saul came to where Samuel was, and he was out to kill David. But when he got there, God put Saul into a frenzy, a prophetic frenzy. He ripped off his clothes and he was prophesying. We're not sure what he was doing, and he was there day and night. And that gave David a chance to get away. So David came back, that he knows Saul is there trying to get him. So David went back to the palace to where Jonathan was. And that's where today's scripture begins, David coming back to the palace to see Jonathan. So David fled from Naioth in Ramah. He came before Jonathan and said, "What have I done? What is my guilt? And what is the sin that your father is trying to take my life?" David needed to find out where Jonathan stood. Was Jonathan now behind the father? Because Jonathan had not warned David that Saul was coming after him. So, what's going on, Jonathan? Are you with me or are you against me? Are you thinking like Saul or are you thinking with me? That's what he's coming back for. And Jonathan then said, "Far from it, you shall not die. My father does nothing, neither great nor small, without disclosing it to me, and why should my father hide this from me? Never." So basically, Jonathan couldn't believe that Saul had gone after David without telling him. Jonathan was in denial. And they're not even in Egypt, right? Denial. Never mind. Apparently, Jonathan didn't know that Saul had chased after David. And David explained to Jonathan, well, he's not going to tell you because you know that we're friends. But David also swore, "Your father knows well that you like me, and he thinks, do not let Jonathan know this, or he'll be grieved. But truly, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, there is but a step between me and death." David has been at the sharp end of that spear several times, where Saul had thrown the spear at him. Now, if you drive a car, especially if you ride with Ron, you are within a step of death. If you live and breathe, you are within a step of death. Isaiah said that there is only a heartbeat between you and death. That is the reason we need to be ready to die at any time. As harsh as that is the truth. Do you trust Christ as your Savior? We all need that joy every day, whether we live or die, to get through the turmoils, the troubles of this life, because there are numerous turmoils and struggles every day. So Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." And David said to Jonathan, "Tomorrow is the new moon. I should not fail to sit with the king at the meal, but let me go so that I may hide in the field until the third evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. And if he says, good, it is well with your servant, but if he is angry, then know that evil has been determined by him. Therefore deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a sacred covenant with you. But if there is guilt in me, kill me yourself. Why should you bring me to your father? Jonathan said, far be it from you. If I knew that it was decided by my father that evil should come upon you, would I not tell you? Then David said to Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers harshly? Jonathan replied to David, come, let us go into the field. So they both went out into the field. Jonathan said to David, by the Lord, the God of Israel, when I have sounded out my father about this time tomorrow or the third day, if he is well disposed toward David, shall I not then send and disclose it to you? But if my father intends to do you harm, the Lord do so to Jonathan also more, if I do not disclose it to you and send you away, so that you may go in safety. May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. And then Jonathan goes on, if I am still alive, show me the faithful love of the Lord. But if I die, never cut off your faithful love from my house, even if the Lord were to cut off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. So now you got to consider the political dynamics of the day. Israel is a new kingdom. You know, Saul has been the first king. But the normal thing for a king of any country to do when a new king takes over, what do? They clean house. So any of the family that's left over from the old king, they just kill them all, because they don't want to take any chance that they would try to come back and take the kingdom. So Jonathan is saying, if I know that you're going to be king. I mean, I am with God. I know God has given you the kingdom and that you're going to take over, and please don't wipe out my family. That's what he's asking David and in their covenant for each other to do. And Jonathan agreed to care for David. Jonathan agreed to care for David, and David agreed to care for Jonathan and the family in the future. And years later, which we'll come to eventually if we keep on plodding through the books of Samuel, years later, David will fulfill this promise to Jonathan's son, and I'll have to get Ron to pronounce that. It was a handicapped son, Mephibosheth, something like that. It's about 20 characters long, and that's in 2 Samuel 9 if you're looking ahead. So David will take care. We will come through on this promise here. Thus Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord seek out the enemies of David. Jonathan made David swear by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own life. These are best buds, and they're doing everything they can to watch out for each other. So now we come, so there's this party, and they're going to have the party, and David should be at the party, and he's not going to be. And that's the test to see what Saul thinks about David not being there. So Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is the new moon. You'll be missed because your place will be empty. On the day after tomorrow, you shall go out a long way down to the place where you hid yourself earlier and remain beside the stone there. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it as though I was shot at a mark. Then I will send the boy, my servant, saying, go find the arrows. If I say to him, and that's Kinsey's going to go chase the arrows. If I say to him, look, the arrows are on this side of you, collect them, then you are to come, for as the Lord lives, it is safe for you, and there is no danger. But if I say to the young man, look, the arrows are beyond you, then go, for the Lord has sent you away. As for the matter about which you and I have spoken, the Lord is witness between you and me forever. So the plan called for Jonathan to shoot arrows. And nobody would be suspicious about him shooting arrows, right? Because he was a military man. He shot arrows all the time. And David's going to be hiding in the field. That's Cole. He's going to be hiding in the field down behind some stone walls. And nobody can see him. And we want to make sure that nobody else knows that it's David is down there hiding. And we hope that Dustin's a good shot and doesn't shoot Cole. So now you might wonder why all this play acting and all. Why doesn't he just go out and tell him? Well, because, he doesn't know who might be watching. There might be, after the party, they might all go outside. Oh, let's watch Jonathan shoot arrows. So there might be people out watching. So he's got to have a plan, and apparently that didn't happen. But he had to be a plan. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon came, the king sat at the feast to eat. The king sat upon a seat, as other times, upon the seat of the wall, by the wall. Jonathan stood while Abner sat by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Saul didn't say anything that day, for he thought, something has befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. So remember, there's all kind of Jewish traditions. If David had touched blood or done something unclean, he wouldn't be able to come to the festival, and that's why Saul gave him that excuse. Maybe he's not clean, maybe that's why not there. But on the second day, the day after the new moon, David's place was empty. And Saul said to his son Jonathan, why has the son of Jesse not come to the feast, either yesterday or today? Now, it's not obvious to us here, but when he calls him the son of Jesse, that is a dig. That is an insult. Because Jesse, he's a lowlife. He's not a normal person like us royals. He's a lowlife. And he's calling him a son of Jesse. That's no good. Even though David is married into the family and is part of the family, he's calling him a lowlife, is what he's calling him there. So Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. He said, let me go, for our family is holding a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to go there. So now, if I have found favor in your sight, let me get away and see my brothers. For this reason, he has not come to the king's table. That sounds like a very reasonable thing. And of course, it would be normal for people to be gone, to be with family for this festival. But what did Saul say? Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan. And if you remember a ways back, Saul had told David, had snatched David out of his family and said, you're living in the palace from now on. So in Saul's mind, he didn't have a family. He was part of the palace, so he should be there. So Saul said to him, said to Jonathan, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman. What? Where is this coming from? Do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? What? Why is he saying this stuff? For as long as the son of Jesse lives upon the earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Now send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. So now it could be that Saul is worried here that not just David, but David's whole family might put a claim in on the throne. Now, what did God tell Saul about his place on the throne? Anybody remember? God told Saul, I reject you as king. You're toast. You're not king in my eyes anymore. And in some ways you can say that Saul is trying to protect his seat and trying to protect the seat for Jonathan, which now he's yelling at Jonathan and basically his own family for liking David. So Saul's true nature is coming out. Then Jonathan answered his father Saul, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" But Saul threw his spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan knew that it was the decision of his father to put David to death. Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger and ate no food on the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David and because his father had disgraced him. So this time it was Jonathan who had to dodge the spear. In the morning, Jonathan went out into the field to the appointment with David, and with him was a little boy. He said to the little boy, "Run and find the arrows that I shoot." And as the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after the boy and said, "Is not the arrow beyond you?" Now, what's the boy going to think? The arrow's right here. Why are you saying, "I got the arrow"? But then we don't know that. Now, it took courage for Jonathan to communicate with David, even secretly, because he knew that if his father found out, he would be in trouble with his father, because his father was so mad about David. So Jonathan called after the boy and, "Hurry, be quick, do not linger." So Jonathan's boy gathered up the arrows and came to his master. But the boy knew nothing, only Jonathan and David knew the arrangements. Jonathan knew he couldn't trust anybody. Saul had commanded the entire staff, the entire army, to go kill David. Everybody was against David. Now, we know that they weren't necessarily against David, but Saul had commanded them to be against David. And it could be that, whoever would bring in David's head would get a nice reward. So even though David might have thought might be a friend or two someplace, he wouldn't know who it was that might stab him in the back. So Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said to him, "Go and carry them to the city." As soon as the boy had gone, David rose from beside the stone heap and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept with each other, and David wept the more. So apparently Jonathan looked around and said, "There wasn't anybody around. It's safe for me to come down and see you." Now, Jonathan had reason to weep. He was losing his friend. But David had more reason to weep. What was the shortest verse in the Bible? He wept? Yeah, since you said that. The pain of being apart from his friend Jonathan was bad enough. But it was worse for David because now he was going to be hunted down and destroyed. Everybody was after him. So then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever.'" And he got up and left, and Jonathan went into the city. Now, for your edification, Jonathan and David only meet one more time, and that's in 1 Samuel 23. Just for a few moments, they do get to see each other one more time. But for now, David was alone, knowing that the whole nation could be against him. If he went home, his family would be in danger. He was a fugitive, a wanted man. So think of him being alone. What have you done in your life that you were alone and you felt uneasy about being alone? No, I may have told you the story before, but I'm going to tell you again. When I first got involved in Kairos, a pastor friend, invited me to go with him to Kairos. Kairos is a prison ministry, And you go meet with about 40 men for about 8 different meeting times, and you prepare together to get ready to go into the prison. So I was supposed to meet my pastor friend at this site with these 40-some men to prepare. Now, I had never done anything like this. I mean, I met with men before, but not these men. And I didn't have any idea what I was cutting myself into. I just knew that my friend had invited me, and I thought, well, I'll just try it out. And John knows exactly what I'm talking about. He knows what that meeting is like. And so I was going to meet him there, so I showed up. But guess what? My friend did not show up. So here I am walking into this meeting with 40 strange men, all old men, old white men, if you want to say it that way. I didn't know any of them. So there are times that we have to do things alone. Now, another time I thought about of when you're alone is when you have the flu. Has anybody had the flu? What do you feel like when you have the flu? You feel terrible. You don't have any energy. You've got a fever, you're hot, you're sweaty, or whatever. And all you can do is lay there in your bed and say, I feel miserable, but there's nothing you can do to make... I mean, they've got medicines you can take that are supposed to help, but I've never really found that they really help you. All you can do is lay there in bed and wait till you're better. And nobody's going to lay in that bed with you. And it's you. You're just laying there, right? COVID patients are alone. Nobody can be there with them. I mean, the nurses come and go, but they have to, right, Diane? You can come and try to help them, but you can't really get in their face and do a lot of comforting because of the COVID situation. My imagination tells me that when Dale was laying in the hospital, and I consider the VA hospital even more a lonely place than a regular hospital. I mean, you're a number at the VA hospital, and they're just trying to shove people through. My imagination is he's laying there alone, thinking about all of life, the things that have happened, probably mad that he's hooked up to this ventilator and he can't do anything. My imagination is that he's laying there praying, meditating, thinking about what God has in store next. Do we trust God? Do we believe in God? In our life as a Christian, and it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to have times that you're alone. Now, it's good to be together here, to be around other Christians, to get encouragement and strength, and to hear God moments that know that God protects Ron from that car that's trying to get him. But there are times that it's just you alone against a crazy car driver. One more time that we're going to be alone when we're called to heaven. Nobody's going to go with us. Daryl's not going to pick out my tie and say, make sure you got the right tie, or make sure you look good. It'll be just me. And I'll go up to the gate by myself. And it'll just be me and the gate. So what do you want in your heart when you walk up to that gate. You want a feeling that I'm not alone, that I was invited by a friend to a beautiful place, and it's going to be great. The gate's going to open, and there's going to be a big welcoming. David grew up watching the sheep. He was alone. But was David alone? He had God. He realized God was there with him with the sheep, and if you remember the story, he protected the sheep, and he realized that God was helping him protect the sheep. And because he lived that time with the sheep, protecting the sheep, and knowing that God was there, he could see the beautiful stars, he could see the beautiful creation around him, and know that God was there. That's where he got the confidence to go up against that giant that we're going to have to face all the time. Because he knew God was there with him when he was alone. In this moment of the story, David is leaving alone. And he can't trust any earthling. Because any one of them, there might be a bounty, and we don't know that from the story, but there might be a bounty on his head, and any one of them might be after his head. But David walks with God. He didn't walk away from there alone. And God, we're going to see in the next parts of the story, God is going to show him friends that he can trust that will walk with him and get through the next probably 10 years of being chased and hunted. Do we trust God? Do we trust that we're never alone? If we do, we can go anywhere in peace.